Hello, students. To make the game more interesting, we need to add enemies. For now, let's create a single enemy, give them a spectacular appearance, and add some intelligence. The enemies will spawn outside our scene and move towards the player to either devour or befriend them, depending on how you want to play. So, let's create a cube. Make it slightly smaller than the player's cube. Let's set the size to 0.8 on all axes. Apply the scale. Switch to the front view by pressing the number 1 on the numpad and, while holding Ctrl, place the new cube at ground level. It should be positioned at 0.4 on the z-axis, meaning its center should be at this height. Rename it to Enemy01. Give it a material with the same name and choose a blue color. Also in the object properties, immediately disable default spawning for it. Now, let's think about where we will spawn it and how to express it. We have 4 directions from which the enemy will appear. In each direction, we have a range of coordinates for spawning that should be chosen randomly. The enemy should appear at random intervals, in random locations. I suggest dividing each direction into 4 positions. This will give us a total of 16 positions for the enemy to spawn. We could certainly calculate them mathematically, but this time, I propose simplifying our lives. Let's create 16 placeholders in the form of cubes, place them in a folder, and when spawning, simply choose a random placeholder from the available set. Let's create a cube empty. In the empty properties, reduce its size to 0.4. Switch to the top view. Place the empty in this position. In the right panel, on the Item tab, set the z-axis position to 0.4. This is the height at which the enemy will spawn. This height is necessary for the enemy to appear at ground level. Rename the empty to spawn point Enemy01. Now, copy it and place it one grid cell to the right. Repeat this action 2 more times. Then, you can select these 4 empty, duplicate them, and move them symmetrically downward. Next, select all 8 of them and duplicate with a 90-degree rotation along the global z-axis. Now we have 16 placeholders. The last 8 are rotated 90 degrees along the local axis, and we need to correct that. Select 8 placeholders on the left and right, then press Alt-R. This action will reset the rotation to 0. So each placeholder will be at the initial angle, 0 on all axes. Our next task is to change all the names. Let's change the names in a way that includes a sequential number from 1 to 16 clockwise. Now, let's create a new logic branch and name it Enemy Spawn. We won't be able to attach it to the enemy directly because there won't be any enemies on the scene at the start of the game. So, we need to attach this branch to an existing object, for example to the background. Select the background, go to the object properties, and add the new branch to the armor trait list. Now, let's sketch a scheme for how the enemy will appear in the scene. Here's how it works. The starting block is called onTimer. To begin, set the interval to 1 second. Right after that, connect the spawn object by name block. Specify the scene and the enemy's name, which is Enemy1. To the transform channel, we need to connect the spawn coordinates, and for that, we require the getObjectTransform block, which returns all the transformations of the selected object. However, if we choose a single object from the scene, the enemy will always spawn in that single selected object. What we need is to randomly select one of the 16 placeholders each time. This can be accomplished with the random choice block. This block can randomly choose an element from an existing array of objects, or, in other words, from the folder of objects. All we need to do is place all the placeholders for spawning into a separate folder. Select all of them. Press the M key and choose New Collection. Name it Spawn Points Enemies and click OK. Now, retrieve the collection block and specify the new folder. Connect all the blocks. Now, every second, we will spawn an object named Enemy1 at coordinates obtained from a randomly chosen placeholder. Let's run the game and see the results of our efforts. We can see how the enemy spawns in different locations. That's what we need. That's about it for today. Let's add a framework for the enemy's movement. There won't be any intelligence or logic in it today. It will be just a template that we refine in the next lesson. For now, let's create a new branch. Name it Enemy Move and attach it to the enemy. This is important because there will be many enemies, and each copy should have the same code for moving across the screen. Add to blocks. On Update and Translate Object, we will move the object along the global y-axis at a speed of 0.01. Now, run the game again. The enemies now move upwards after spawning, regardless of where they appear. That's all we need for now. Bye-bye.